Hello, 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 everyone. Happy Monday. Happy Monday. It is the January 29th edition of Systems Lab Live. And this is the last session of the Communications 201 series. There are levels to this. And we have learned a whole lot during this particular series. This whole thing, Communications 201, has been all about leveling up in the way that we are managing, leading, and operating in terms of communication as it pertains to our projects, our tasks, our duties, and how we are executing. And so we started off with, and I'm just going to bring up the handy dandy notes because that's always helpful of where we started. So let me go back here. I'm going to go back here into, because I want to just read out everything that we have done so far. So I go to my live streaming, to my Coda doc. Okay, so we've talked about this year so far. We kicked it off with the new year, talking about internal communication. What does it mean to have an internal communications plan? We talked about that. We talked about navigating hybrid team culture. Are we making this too complicated? We talked through some really good finer points there. Then we also talked about the week after your 2024 tech stack. Well, we talked about it in a very interesting way because we didn't just talk about apps. We talked about processes and workflows. We talked about what it means to manage the work, communicate about the work, organizing it, and finding our work. What does it really mean? And then we had a bye week. And then tonight we're doing a 2-for-1, which I think honestly pairs really nicely. We're going to be talking about the side effects of async and communication and meeting management. Why both? Because there is always this pressing, I would say, question or concept of, how do we communicate better, and how do we implement async communication? How do we stop having too many meetings? And I think it's all one in the same. It's all one in the same. And so one of the things that I'm going to be doing is I'm going to pull up our handy dandy Good Notes app. And inside of our Good Notes app, we are going to walk through some notes that I've taken over the past week on this topic. And before we get into all of that, how are people doing? How are people feeling about being 29 days into 2024? What are some things that have surprised you? What are some things that you're learning right now? I'd love to know that in the comments. How have the projects been? How have the tasks been so far? I have a post, maybe it's tomorrow, scheduling more posts out because I'm trying to think. I know it's this upcoming where I ask on LinkedIn, with your particular projects right now, which ones are, what aspects of the project work are kind of giving you heartburn? What's kind of giving you heartburn right now? So I think that'll be an interesting poll because I'm very interested to see what the people are going to say. What are they going to say? What are they going to kind of comment on? And if you're here for the very first time, I welcome you to Systems Lab Live. We are here each and every single week talking about all things relating to productivity, project management, and team operations. This particular show bridges the gap between people, technology, and operations. And so I'm excited that you all are here tuning in to learn more about how to manage your work more efficiently, how to lead your teams, and how to be innovative in your approaches to everyday work. Another thing too to watch out for, I'm going to put this on the screen. I want you to text, not text live, text PM Huddle to 626-722-5444. That's where you can get weekly text messages from me. I just sent one out this morning, talking through async communication, and reminding people about tonight's live stream. But you'll get a weekly text from me, some thoughts, some articles, I sent also a podcast that I did last year, which from the season called Communication. Is pretty good. But we are talking about um, async communication tonight. We're talking about it from the perspective of, are we actually using it correctly? Are you using it correctly? And we're also talking about ways in which we can manage the work better. That's what we're talking about here. And really, in some ways, how do we go about managing our meetings and making sure that they're not, but so cumbersome? A couple quick updates from me as well is the brand new season. Speaking of podcasting, two really cool opportunities. One is this Thursday, I'll be doing a Miro. You guys have heard I work with Miro a lot. It's a mind mapping tool, a wire, my mind mapping brainstorming tool. If you've heard of draw.io, Microsoft Visio, Whimsical, exact same kind of concept, but Miro is really cool. It's a visual flow charting software mind mapping tool. And so Miro has been one of my favorites. And so I'll be presenting, doing like a user, a member to member event showcasing how I use Miro. So two cool ways I use Miro. One is always to outline a presentation. I always use Miro for that, a visual representation of how I plan and craft presentations. Number two, I use it for a lot of project work, outlining what's the scope and coming up with the idea. So I like to always take an opportunity to do that. And then also two, workflows. Any type of workflow that I'm creating from scratch, go straight to Miro to visualize that particular concept. And some two active Miro boards that I'm going to be show and telling on Thursday is for the upcoming podcast season. And it's going to be fantastic. The name of the season is called Built from Scratch. And I love it because what we're really doing is we're telling two sides of the coin. But the overall big picture for Built from Scratch is we're talking about, what does it really mean to build a program, a project, an initiative from scratch? Some of you all may be in companies. Some of you all are working for entrepreneurs. Maybe you all are embarking upon new things. Maybe you in your career, you're working on something that you've never worked on before. How do you go about navigating this aspect of building from scratch? So we're going to go through a case study. We have 5 episodes. The first 5 episodes are you and me. We're going to go through a case study from Slack. A report from Slack talking about the state of work. So we're going to talk about that from the perspective of how we're leading and managing our work in our workplaces. And then we're going to go straight into this case study and kind of talk through risk management, scope, budgeting, all these things. And so from that lens, I want you all to really be thinking about your current work. What are things that you're doing? What are things you're not doing? What are some strategies and things? So it's going to be really neat. Then the second half of the season is I'm interviewing some of my favorite people who are building some really cool things, some businesses, some programs, some really cool initiatives. And so they're going to be walking us through their journey, their journey, their real life journey. And so you're going to see some built from scratch moments, some lessons that they're going to be sharing with you all. So it's going to be really good. That will be launched sometime in February. I'm going to get a date soon, getting a couple things updated and whatnot, but it's going to be fantastic. And in fact, the next week's live stream, or rather the February series, probably will be longer than that, but we'll be in a long stretch. I would say it'll just be a built from scratch next theme that will be built from scratch. So we'll also be talking about some current events, some current projects that are out in the news, things like that. And we're going to be talking about what are other companies, what are some other things that are happening that we can really start to look at, and we can start from ourselves, take and learn from. So that's what we do, and that's what we should be expecting. Thank you all for joining. I see I'm just looking at the Instagram fam joining in. Very good to see everyone there. Drop a comment in terms of what you're working on during this time. We'd love to know that. Let's see. All right. So today's topic, we're talking about this aspect of productivity, right? And we're going to loop directly into async communication in just a minute. But I want to just kind of walk us through that. And let me bring up our good old good note for that. Okay, here we go. Okay. So when I share my screen on this, here we are. Great. Good. I mean, okay, great. That still looks really good too. You guys can see this. Okay. So today's reference point on the screen you have here, you see that the reference point is async first is not equal to async only. Okay. Why is that important for us to put that out there just right away? Well, mainly because when we talk about this question around productivity, how do we measure it? We're acknowledging this problem of we got too many meetings, right? We got way too many meetings. And so in this Slack report that I talk about on the podcast, I talk about, they walk us through this concept of how do we go about measuring productivity? And I don't always know if that is the right question to ask, but I believe the perspective is from that CEO's perspective, from the company perspective. I think they're measuring the output, they're measuring what people are producing, and they're measuring the cost of it all, and also the profit margins. And so I'm not sure if there's ever an effective way to say, like, to be able to say, all right, this is how you measure productivity. I think I think this has to be a holistic view, a holistic perspective that we look at. I think it's qualitative, I think it's quantitative. I think it's highly dependent on your workflows, your culture, and also what does management, what does the senior leadership, what are they saying around productivity? I think oftentimes too is how do we solve for X? How do we solve for being more productive? And oftentimes it's, let me get an app. There's an app for that. And so I think that's wrong, right? I think that the app is a part of the solution, but it is not the solution. This is why I say it's async first, but not async only, right? Because there is a time and there's a place for the async communication. So there's also this concept that I think we need to be thinking about too, where it is people first always. What does the culture say about async communication? What does your culture say about how productive you are? And I think, again, this aspect of productivity is a gumbo, if you will, a gumbo of all sorts of things, right? I think it's a gumbo of what you're being assigned, your workload, the complexity of it, work life rhythm. Yeah, a whole bunch of things. I think task switching, I think is something that we should be talking about a lot. Hold on. But before we kind of get there, when we talk about, okay, good. I'm glad y'all can see that because I was very concerned. When we talk about, okay, I think you guys can see it on there. Okay, good. So before we get into task switching, well, this kind of goes into it right here. Okay. So talking through meetings. I got this from this report. It says that 14 hours is the time the average technologist spends in meetings each week. 68%, the percentage of effective meetings. 18 interruptions per day from instant messaging, daily average. So the hours of deep work of deep work desired is 20. Hours of deep work achieved, 11. Hours average deep work deficit, 45. Top 3 barriers to deep work: meetings, instant messaging, and task switching, which is what I wanted to get to. But so here's where I want to kind of center this conversation, especially as you are leading and managing teams, and have those of you that you know have the influence to be able to create your own kind of work rhythm, or you can help to influence your team's culture and how you kind of go about your work. I think we need to think about what we're actually meaning about, right? When it comes to the meetings, I think we need to think through everything that has to do with the types of interruptions. See, I had a little ding. I'm like already looking at the interruption. The average amount of interruptions that we're getting. And I think the task switching, I want to highlight that because I think that's so important. I think the task switching is something that we don't often think about. So going from task to task, meeting to meeting, all of that contributes to the amount of time that we're spending in meetings and also the disruption. I think too, and I want to say, I will let me try to let me see if I can open this up. I'm trying to open up this article because it had a really good stat on how long it takes. Oh no. I know what I'm talking about. Hold on. Let me go to the next note. Okay. Task switching. This is what I wanted to show you all. Typically, office workers react to emails within 6 seconds of arriving. How true is that, folks? So true. It is so true. It takes 64 seconds to resume work. I think maybe even longer. I'd love to know for you all in the chat, what is it in terms of task switching? How has that, excuse me, played a role in the work that you're doing? How has that played a role in what you're doing? I'm gonna tell you right now, when I have the Monday mornings, I'm not done. I don't get like a break until 11 o'clock. And by that time, it takes a minute for me to get back in rhythm. I have my Outlook organized by folder. Ooh, that's good. That's real good. I think that's really good. Um, I was doing, I create rules for each email type and only check the high priority bins. I would say, I mean, that's some high level stuff there. And I think that's probably going to have to be the move that people are going to have to make, is the power of the rules. So whether that is going to be the Gmail or it's going to be the Outlook, I think we got to start sinking in on how we can make these high priority items, the main focus, right? Checking email causes 96 interruptions in an 8-hour workday, which ends up to being 1.5 hours per day of reorienting. Mm-hmm. 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 So this is good because one thing that I think is something for us to all think about when it comes to reducing the task switching is knowing what needs to be emailed, I think, because we're talking about email right here. I also think, and I think we went over this the week before last, but talking about where do we manage the conversations about the work? Because and making team rules, and this is why it's so good to have team agreements. I talked about team agreements. Probably have to do another live stream about it some other time. But I think I talked about it like last March. I think I remember. What does it mean to have a team agreement? Which is getting some rules around how we communicate. So I think a really good pro tip is to say, here's where we talk about all project work in Slack or within the particular project with inside a ClickUp or Asana or Notion. This is where we're going to find the conversations. I think that obviously email is still relevant. I'm not saying don't eliminate email at all. Not at all. But I think from what we have here, you gotta, I think, have some parameters around what that inbox is going to be for. I think that's it. But I thought these stats were a bit jarring, just in terms of the task switching, because I think that's a lot of us. I think we're switching from task to task. I also think that's a key indicator of why prioritization within your work is really, really crucial. And so those that, and I want to give some use cases right now, those that are managing multiple projects, maybe you're in more of a corporate setting. Maybe this is also relative to those that are in the entrepreneurial space as well. But I'm thinking about the prioritization piece because this is a question that I get often. How do you manage multiple projects? And so I think and it's easy question to answer, but then also I think it's challenging, right? Circumstances, culture, how you work, all the things, right? But I think one of the key things in terms of the managing of the multiple deadlines is really having a handle on the schedule, the tasks, what your involvement is, and really drilling down to capacity. So some of that might have to be, hey, this week my focus, maybe it's only on like two things. Maybe it's on two things. Maybe it's like, all right, I know I can spend a morning doing this. And I'm not saying, that's not challenging, that you can't do more than, however much time and capacity and, the complexity of what you're doing. I'm not saying that at all. I think there's room for you to take on as much as you can take on, but I think that we have to get, more vocal. What's happening, Justin? We have to get more vocal on communicating what we can handle capacity wise. And I think this is also when we talk about measuring this productivity, that original question that the Slack report, which is, again, I do the full breakdown on the podcast per chapter per episode. But this is, an executive measures the productivity based upon like the output, right? And I think that is relative and subjective due to the scope and the complexity of what's going on. Because you may not be able to just finish, depending on where you are with a project. You may not be able to, you may be further ahead than another project. You may be, right? So prioritization, I think whoever is leading a team, and you all are you all are working on multiple projects, but maybe it's the same team, right? Because I do that often as well, leading out teams, knowing what's the key priority, right? Getting everybody on the same page of what the key priorities are based upon the schedule, based upon what's the prioritization. If you're someone that you may not even be managing people, but you lead out efforts, and maybe you have someone that is more senior, being in sync with that person to say, this is what I'm seeing as what we're focusing on for the week. Are we on the same page? I do that a lot as well. I do that all the time. I think it's important. I think you got to do it. I'm a big fan of go on and over communicate. Go on and double check the double check, because I think we're just in a day and time, whether it's remote, hybrid, we're transitioning back to work, all these conversations and things that are happening. You might as well go ahead and saddle up and pony up, and be able to talk about what's the workload. How do you really demonstrate that, right? How do you go about demonstrating that? Well, I think a couple different ways. I think two tools that do this really well are ClickUp and Asana. I think they do that extraordinarily well, looking at what the workload is. And, again, your PM tool, especially for your dashboards and such, they're only as strong as the data, the information. I'm actually going to bring something up on ClickUp, and I don't know because they've changed their dashboards up a bit, but I have a demo board. I always use this demo board because it's lovely. Where is this? Dashboards. Dashboards. Okay. And like I said, they've just changed it up. And I'm gonna see if this is one of them. Drill down is now available on pie chart. See, ClickUp just has all the things. Saving your dashboards as a PDF. Ooh. Click any section to see task details. Oh, yeah. That's right. That's right. Okay. Let me see if I can switch this for a minute. You may be able to see it. JK to the JK. Share screen. Share the tab. Now, some of these things are maybe, it's like I said, ClickUp has made a lot of changes. So, you see task by assignee. I love this because it says like 67% has not been assigned. But you see these two people right here, Liz Schuler and A Schuler. There's 18% of tasks by assignee. I'm actually going to open this up. Oh, this is nice. I love how I'm just like very excited about this. Oh, okay, this is really cool. You can actually um go in and see. Oh, that's cool. So you can go in and so I'm going to, yeah, see how this changes? Ooh, look at this. And so you can go in and begin to see. You can begin to see. And then you can go and I mean, this is kind of cool because if you have forgotten to, kind of see what the workload is, this is pretty sweet. So you may not be able to say this fully, but like basically what's going on here is that you have the task by assignee. And then there's a workload feature here. And you can see a couple things. The amount of tasks that have been worked on. So look at this right here. This Ashley Schuler has worked on 60 tasks. A Schuler has worked on 18, and Liz has worked on 21. So it's a lot going on. It's a lot going on. And so you can add a card, and I'm just like fascinated by a lot of these. So you can do like workload. Oh, this is workload by status, right? Okay. I think so. I think this is workload by status. Display a pie chart of your statuses across location. So again, you can go and go right here, all statuses. And what is this? Well, I'll just confirm all these. Include the subtasks. Display as percent. And add a card. Let's see what happens. Aha. So yeah, so you can really see, like, you can do the workload by status if you need to, right? Or you can even do it by assignee. And is this how I did it? I'm just wondering what this one is. Oh, tasks by assignee. Well, what about this? Edit card. Okay. Let me see. Let me add something. And then now I'm just like having a whole bunch of fun. Group by. Okay, I see. Display, include the task. Okay, I see what's going on here. You do the workload by status. But this is still a good way, right? You can see the priority task and you can see, like, you can just kind of see where things are right here. And then I believe what you also can do here is, if you go into here, right? If you go here, you can also click view, and then you can also go to workload. And then this is, again, you're looking at the capacity management. And so maybe you want it to be like a more of a private view, because maybe you're just like, I need to make sure, what's what. And assignee. Some of this is workload by assignee. And let me see something here, because I often, this is like one of my demo ones here. So let's go back to list view. So I may need to, or can I? I'm going to go back here for a minute, y'all, because I'm now, okay, what's this? Oh, can I go and, yeah, because I think workload. Yeah. So I wanted to go back because you can see right here, like, the workload capacity of, like, wow, Liz is working a lot of hours. Okay. She's 8 hours and 30 minutes over capacity, right? So I say all this to say is that tools like ClickUp and Asana are really good at seeing who's working on what, and you can be able to make the right decisions regarding resources and time, and, like, even to know if somebody, especially if you're looking at task by assignee, if you're going and having multiple projects, you can create some really cool dashboards, and that can just inform you of who can work on what, right? Can you even take, because you could be at capacity, right? You could be at capacity, or you could even, if you want to make a hiring decision. All of these things, the data always will inform you, right? So that's my point, really, talking through that with you all. These are just play numbers, y'all. Play numbers. What's this? Okay, cool. We're into the play numbers. All right. Okay, so we've talked about that. We talked about task switching, which is good. Any questions? Please let me know. Okay, something else to think and or considering to consider. Another reference point question. This goes into implementing async communication. Okay. The reference point question I want to ask is, how do you know when to go async? I'm going to post a comment. How do you know when to go async? Or rather, when to use async communication? How do you know? How do you know? I think it's important. How do you know when to go async? So I think that's important because you're really focusing then on the meetings that need to happen, what could actually be reduced or eliminated. But I always say this, you got to plan. You got to plan to go async, right? It's async first, but not async only. Highly dependent on your culture, highly dependent on how you all have crafted rules and processes to go async. Now, in terms of implementing async, we go in a little bit more to this. I'm just going to zoom on in. You probably, yep. Okay, great. You all can see that here. 3 factors to consider: the business buy-in. The team has the time and space to slow down and absorb change with minimum chaos. All of this is with the umbrella. We'll put an umbrella on this. Change management at its finest, right? This is what this is, because you're changing culture, you're changing a process. Team buy-in. All team members see value. If folks, if you don't have buy-in from leadership, if you don't have buy-in from your team, if they don't see the value, throw it all away. Continue with your 80 million meetings. That's it. Practice alignment. The team is able to shift to more asynchronous ways of working without losing much value in real time. Can people still get the same value of meeting virtually or face to face? Can they still get the same value versus doing a automated Slack stand-up meeting Monday, Wednesday, Friday? Is it still the same? Is the value still there? That is the question to ask. So when people talk about async communication and things like that, you just want to make sure, people understand why. I don't think you'll get too much more resistance when it comes to going async, but you want to explain to people what you're doing and why you're doing. Because once you start introducing new ways of doing things and possibly new technology, you may start getting a little bit of resistance, but you have to show, you have to lead the way. Someone's going to have to lead the way. I mean, it's always the one person. It's always the one person that is leading the way. It's always the one person. Tiffany, hello, hello. Adiola, how are you doing? Great to see everyone. So write those 3 things down: the business buy-in, the team buy-in, and then practicing alignment. That is what will be beneficial for everyone. Okay. Now, another question of the hour that we kind of have here is, when we talk about this concept of burnout, how do we win back time without sacrificing the quality of work in burnout? That is something that I often think about when we discuss going async, reducing meetings and things of that nature. How do we go about, because there's always this question of, I need more time, I want to win back more time. It's all about the time. And then when you think about, from the earlier particular stat where they talked about deep work, which is a concept of how people go into their own sort of zone of genius and they go and do their quote unquote deep work, meaning their zone of genius work where it's uninterrupted and it's, they're in their zone, creating, implementing, writing, doing whatever it is that they do. So the big question, especially on the flip side of how do we measure productivity, the other question is, how do I get more time? How do I get more time? And really, I think to take it a step further, it's as project managers, if we're thinking about the work that we're doing, if it's multiple projects, most likely, how do we win back time without sacrificing the quality of work and burnout? And so that's a reflection question that I think that we should have, the thing that we should be thinking about. So from there, our next question, or a really concept that we want to talk about, is now that we have essentially established and talked through some of the things with meeting management, I kind of wrote out something which I kind of thought conceptually, what is it, what's the natural progression of how we go about elevating our meeting experience? We go from updates, company updates and things, one-on-ones, what else? Team meetings, things like that. But what most are doing these days and in times is cutting down meetings where they're more biweekly. That's one where they can kind of save up and store up information. They can be a little bit more intentional with the meeting time. They don't see the need to meet every week. Moving away from strictly updates because you can post them. You can also make videos. You can do a Loom video and just do an update of sorts. But now the question becomes, because again, we're trying to think through, how do we win back our time? But how do we do things in a manner that doesn't sacrifice the quality of work and burnout? And now we're seeing the power of moving from meetings and updates to strategy, to the how. How do we do this? Right? How do we do this? And then also decision making, meetings that really just focus on, we need a decision. And that could be a 2-in-1. It all depends on kind of what it is. But I want you all to see yourself in what the particular meeting structure that you currently have, or meeting culture. Is it just on updates? It's not that you can't have updates, but what's the culture? Is it report outs? Is it just check 1, check 2, check 3? Do you have space? Do you leave space for strategy and decision making? I'll tell you something that we'll be looking into in a bit, which we'll get into, is the new way of meetings. Something that Jeff Bezos does is whenever they prepare meetings, and I'm assuming this is probably company wide, but I'll probably go back to the article just to make sure. But what's really interesting is that they have something called a meeting memo. This is also something I've learned about through Coda, which is a great doc app. It's all in one documentation tool. And so what these two-way syncs, or these meeting memos, what they do is it's all about preparing people to discuss whatever strategy is being presented, whatever idea, and what type of decisions that need to be made. So these docs called two-way syncs are written up, and they give the issue, the problem, the solution, kind of the how, and then inside of the doc is an interactive element where people can ask questions and give feedback. All this is happening outside of the meeting. So by the time the meeting comes, then this information has been updated so that a decision can be made on particular next steps. So similar to Jeff Bezos and his meeting rule is almost a similar concept. There's a write-up, and it's a write-up of what's being presented. And then they come to the meeting and they give the feedback on what was being presented. So that is something we'll probably get into that in a different season, but wanted just to start to introduce that to you all to think through as you think about meeting preparation. Think about, how do you prepare your team members, and what is it that you're expecting? What is it that you're expecting from this? And this kind of goes into some pro types, pro tips, excuse me, some pro tips that I think many of us could really benefit from. So, something that is often could be a hindrance, which is not inviting the whole world to a meeting, only inviting who you need, which can be tough. Because you're trying to think, we need this person's input, and that just goes back to intention. Is this an update meeting? Are we evolving to more strategy and decision making? You kind of need to know where you fall in terms of the types of meeting you have, and what you actually need. So only inviting who you need, understanding that outcomes matter, which again, as you think about calling a meeting, think about, all right, well, what do I want from this meeting? What is it that I need? Do I need more brainstorming, more strategizing, and do I need a decision? And then agendas are your North Star. All of that. See, this is why, this is how you know kind of who to invite. So if you're have an idea, okay, I need to have this meeting, and this is what I'm needing. This is what needs to happen. This is where the bottleneck is. Then you know from the agenda perspective, your North Star. You know how to put it together. You know who needs to be there. You know the ways in which you need to think about and prepare for. And as you go into sending invites and coordinating, then you start thinking through, all right, well, how do I best prepare people to take action? How do I do that? And so you try out, these three, right? And start testing it out in terms of your current structure that you have right now. So maybe you can't, disinvite folks, so to speak. So just start thinking through, well, I need to make sure I make the agenda really tight. So maybe I have an agenda and I have specific minutes that we put per topic so that we can stay on course. Then perhaps I go and help to prep people for meetings, because maybe I will have maybe a one-on-one or two, or maybe you send a message to somebody, say, for this meeting, this is really what I'm looking for. I'd love to have your input on this X, Y, and Z. Maybe you help prep that person so that they can come to the meeting ready to go. But these are the three that are really going to help transform all of what you're doing. All right. Well, this really, I think, rounds out this month's theme. And so next month's theme is built from scratch, and we'll be really excited to really talk about what's really happening in the world, what's been happening currently as it pertains to the PM space, the productivity space, innovations and things. And so it's going to be an exciting time. So be on the lookout for the schedule for that very, very shortly, very, very soon. For those of you who have enjoyed this particular episode, please, please, please go and share this link out to a friend. Also, too, coaching slots are open for those that are looking to streamline their communication. Perhaps you are working on a project in that you're looking to become more of a strategic leader in your space, looking to ensure that you have a plan in place. Maybe you're working on building up your team operations plan, working on things within ClickUp, and working on things within your innovations of how you can be more effective within your project work. Grab a spot in all of those, it's inside of the show notes for you to click on the link to book a call. So I'd love to talk to you and how we can partner together. All right, everyone. You have a wonderful rest of the week. Hello, Kelly. Hello, Javon. Thank you all for stopping by, and we will talk soon.